Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center, a program that focuses on developments in the Philippines, legislations that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concerns the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of this and more will be Front and Center. Join me in this half-hour program here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can watch this program over Radyo Pilipinas World Service via Facebook page live broadcast. Just access our Facebook page, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can also catch every Front and Center programs over our YouTube channel. Just type in your YouTube browser, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. The program, Front and Center, and the programs of Radyo Pilipinas World Service can also be listened to the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. So come and join us for another edition of Front and Center. I am your host, Rey Sampang. On October 19, 2023, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. went to Saudi Arabia to participate in the first ASEAN Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC. The event participated by other ASEAN leaders and Middle Eastern countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman. The GCC summit is primarily about the endorsement of the framework of cooperation between the ASEAN and the GCC, which is the first summit that aims to intensify and optimize the ties between the two regional organizations, which dates back to 1990. Philippine President Marcos Jr. left on Thursday Manila time and safely landed in Saudi Arabia on October 20, 2023, and returned to the Philippines on the same day, October 20, after official dinner provided by the host country. But before leaving for Saudi Arabia, President Marcos Jr. gave a departure speech focusing on the participation in the said event, and even clarifying his directives to suspend the Maharlika Investment Fund's implementing rules and regulations.
I leave for Riyadh, Saudi Arabia today to attend the ASEAN Gulf Cooperation Council Summit. I will meet with ASEAN and Gulf Cooperation Council leaders to discuss the challenges of major geopolitical developments and the comprehensive and concrete enhancement of our security, our economic progress, and socio-cultural collaboration after more than 30 years of ASEAN-GCC relations. I would like to point out that this is a particularly important conference because this is the first interaction between ASEAN and the GCC, both of whom are very vibrant regions in terms of economic development for the globe. And that is why the Philippines needs to be part of that discussion. It gives us, the Philippines, a unique opportunity to advance our priorities in ASEAN under the ASEAN-GCC framework, while forging closer cooperation between the two dynamic regional organizations. This summit will serve as an important platform for the Philippines to highlight the need for cooperation in energy and food security, logistics, supply chains, digital information, the free flow of goods, people, and services, as well as the enhancement and protection of the rights, of course, of our overseas workers. We will emphasize our advocacy for a rules-based international order to maintain peace and security, stability in our regions. GCC countries are home to an estimated 2.2 million Filipinos working in critical fields. I will be meeting with the Filipino community in Riyadh to share with them important developments here at home and to thank them for their invaluable contributions. We will see to it that our constructive engagement with ASEAN and our partners will continue to serve our national interest and the well-being of the Filipino people. Before I end, I would just like to make a comment because one of the important aspects of this trip will be for us to introduce the Maharlika Investment Fund to the rest of the world and certainly more specifically to the Middle Eastern countries. I was a bit alarmed by the news reports early this morning that I read in the newspapers that we have put the Maharlika Fund on hold. Quite the contrary. We are, the organization of the Maharlika Fund proceeds apace. And what I have done, though, is that we have found more improvements that we can make specifically to the organizational structure of the Maharlika Fund. The concept of the Maharlika Fund as a sovereign fund or an investment fund, the concept remains a good one. And we are still committed to having it operational before the end of the year. So we should not misinterpret what we have done as somehow a judgment on the rightness or wrongness of the Maharlika Fund. On the contrary, we are just finding ways to make it as close to perfect and ideal as possible. And that was what we have done. And this has been in consultation not only with our economic managers, but also with the people, the personalities who will actually be involved in the fund. And that's why their inputs have been very important, and that is why we are going to now utilize them to make it a better organization. And with that in mind, we are encouraged by the reaction of our friends in the Middle East, and for that matter, around the world, to the fund. And we're very encouraged that we are going down the right path.
The first thing on the Philippine President's itinerary is the interaction with the Filipino community in Saudi Arabia, where he had more than a warm welcome due to the hundreds, if not thousands, of Filipinos coming from different regions of Saudi Arabia. Did not miss the chance to see the President, since this is the first time President Marcos will visit Saudi Arabia. It is also trivial to note that this region, the Filipinos in the Middle East, claim a large percentage of overseas votes in favor of then presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who is now the President of the Philippines. Right after the Filipino community event, President Marcos Jr. went straight to work, attending meetings with the Saudi business sector, as well as the Saudi officials. President Marcos Jr. brings forth to the first ASEAN GCC the concern of ASEAN, including the Philippines, in addressing energy and food security, but not also food security. Some of the countries in the said region, especially Qatar, are among the largest producers of fertilizers, and they can fill up the slack of deficit on the ASEAN side. The Philippine Chief Executive likewise focused on the 54 years and 45 years of diplomatic relationship between Philippines and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, respectively. The first ASEAN GCC or GC also provided the Philippine President the presentation of Maharlika Fund, along with the administration's pursuit for the protection of Filipinos in Saudi Arabia and its assistance to the development of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Let's watch and listen to a part of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during the roundtable discussion with Saudi business leaders.
We continue to reaffirm our readiness for deeper economic partnerships, not just within the Southeast Asian region, but as well as with our extended neighbors here in the Gulf. We hope that the Philippines will be your chosen gateway to the ASEAN and Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP economies, which was earlier spoken about. And on that note, I hope that the Saudi business leaders present here today will further make it happen in the Philippines. I look forward to seeing that this meeting we will further engage our two countries and will develop and explore opportunities that as yet we have not discussed between our two countries.
Indeed, the first ASEAN GCC is an opportunity to strengthen ties with the Middle Eastern countries, especially oil-producing countries. Their capability to provide enough supply of oil in the world market helps the stability of the world, especially to countries such as the Philippines, which is dependent on the dictate of the prices in the international market, especially now that the world, with its current situation, puts further strain to local economies of emerging markets such as the Philippines. But besides the matter of oil and energy, President Marcos Jr., during his participation in the event, relayed to Saudi Arabia and other countries such as Bahrain that not only that his government is seeking further strengthening of bilateral and trade ties on different aspects, but also the importance of securing the protection of overseas Filipino workers in the Middle East. And with high hopes, this host would like to see the full fruition of the pledge or promise of the Saudi Arabian government through its Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman, the financial assistance amounting to 2 billion reals for Filipino workers that were laid off in 2015, where businesses in construction were affected by the falling oil prices. Front and Center will be back after this episode of Pinoy Kultura.
Time to celebrate kulturang Pinoy. Tradisyon, musika, sining, literatura at iba pa. Anything and everything fun and Filipino. Ito ang Pinoy Kultura.
A blessing of safe voyage and a chance to cool off. Pinagmamalaki ng kanta ang Antipolo, named after tipolo or breadfruit, prolific in the area. The city prides itself as a pilgrimage capital of the Philippines. Two of its more popular attractions are the historical church of the Nuestra Señora de la Paz y Buen Viaje and its summer popular waterfalls, ang Hinulugang Taktak. The Franciscan missionaries built the church in 1578 and the Jesuits administered it in 1591. Thousands traveled to pray to Our Lady of Peace and Good Voyage, brought in from Mexico in 1626 and enshrined in the cathedral. A favorite tradition is trekking to the shrine on Good Friday Eve and May 1st. Another tradition is having new cars blessed at the church. Many believe it will ensure the safety of the car and its passengers. OFWs also pray for success abroad. Pagkatapos ng pagpapala sa misa ay ang inaabangan ng mga bata ang pagligo sa sikat na Hinulugang Taktak, described playfully in its song. It was first opened in July 1952, became a national park in September 1990, and a protected landscape in November 2000. In 2002, it had to be rehabbed because of water pollution. In February 2020, Hinulugang Taktak reopened, together with unique recreational installations for wall climbing, hanging bridges, and a spider web platform. And don't forget, before you leave, ang pasalubong. Sikat sa lugar ang suman at mangga. But you can also bring home antipolo in a jar, like cocoa jam, latik, kalamay, or adobong kasoy. So, no time to waste. Get into the culture, enjoy a blessing, and have some fun. Tayo na!
Yan ang Pinoy Kultura because our culture is cool.
Serving the Republic of the Philippines for more than 75 years. Ito po ang Presidential Broadcast Service.
You're still listening to Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. On October 13, 2023, a Chinese Navy ship again shadowed a Philippine vessel en route for a resupply mission to Rizal Reef, part of the Spratly Islands in the West Philippine Sea. The Philippine vessel, BRP Benguet, was shadowed by the Chinese gray ship and even tried to block the path of the Philippine vessel by crossing in front of its bow, just few yards away. A move, according to military and security experts and analysts say, is a very dangerous and unprofessional maneuver by the Chinese and can be seen as a provocation. But this endeavor is not new to the Philippines. Just ask the Philippine Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy on how many times encounters such as these happen. And even worse, as the small fishermen who, due to the military and naval vessels and Chinese maritime militia in the West Philippine Sea, prevents these local fishermen in Ayungin Shoal, Scarborough Shoal, Mischief Reef, and other islands and shoals within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines get their livelihood. These Chinese vessels use water cannons and even military-grade lasers to prevent Filipino fishermen from fishing in the was once shared by countries like Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and even China, until such time that the Chinese government, through the use of its naval assets and maritime militia, prevented the traditional fishing grounds to be used, not to be used by other countries, claiming that the region is their territory, such as the nine-dash-line claim of China and their self-proclaimed territorial claim in the West Philippine Sea has no legal basis. At least, if it comes to the International Arbitral Tribunal, that claims of China when it comes to the West Philippine Sea is baseless and therefore awarded favor to the Philippines. But despite that, it's obvious more powerful Navy and Coast Guard and swarms of maritime militia, the Philippine Navy, Coast Guard, and even the Philippines Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, they do not relent and they do not bow to the harassments done by China and continue to serve the interests and continue to protect the country's sovereignty. Now, even patriotic civilians from different civilian organizations even voiced and expressed willingness to provide assistance and support to the soldiers aboard the marooned Philippine Navy ship BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal, and probably on other Philippine Navy or Army posts on the islands claimed by the Philippines, including the municipality of Pag-asa Islands. And just recently, Philippine Defense Secretary Gilbert Chodoro accused China of being a squatter in the West Philippine Sea. The Philippine defense official made the statement in response to accusations made by Chinese Foreign Ministry earlier this week that the Philippines illegally occupied Pag-asa Island, where a Filipino community call it their home. It lies well within the 200-mile exclusive economic zone of the country, which China claims to be part of its territory, despite the 2016 arbitration case the Philippines won before the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. To help us understand the legal stand of the Philippines in its position in the West Philippine Sea, which by virtue of the 2016 arbitral ruling in favor of the Philippines against China's self-proclaimed now 10-line, it used to be 9-line, let me tell you that. It used to be 9-line, now it's 10-line. We have on the line one of the Philippines' renowned international studies experts from the De La Salle University. And mind you, he is our maiden guest of honor for this program, Professor Renato Rene Di Castro. Good day, Rene, and welcome to the program Front and Center.
Good afternoon, Ray. How are you doing?
Well, I'm...
Hello, Ray. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me,
Okay.
Rene? Yes, okay. All right. Well, I'm...
okay.
Right now, I'm still scratching my head over this because of the latest developments, Rene. Let me go first to my first question. Is there any basis on China's foreign ministry's statement that the Philippines illegally occupied Pag-asa Island?
But before anything else, I would like to emphasize I'm not a legal expert. So my knowledge regarding the legality of this issue, of course, is based on my conversation with the real legal experts, like, of course, the retired Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, and of course my good friend Professor J. Batong Bakal of the University of the Philippines. My area is primarily strategic and of course diplomatic.
Yes.
So of course, what China is basically impressing upon us is might makes right. So despite the fact that two elements here, China is a signatory of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. So once you sign that agreement, you renounce basically any historic claim. So on the basis of this, China is violating UNCLOS, and the very agreement it of course signed, as a member of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, and numbered of course the arbitral ruling. The arbitral ruling clearly states that China's 9-line, or now of course 10-line claim, has simply have no legal basis. China's argument is based on this, that these waters had been navigated and have been explored and exploited by Chinese navigators and fisher folks. The arbitral ruling states no. China's navigators, fishermen, and of course uh, ships had not solely controlled the South China Sea. The South China Sea historically is a sea common to all. So all our ancestors of the Indonesians, Malaysians, Filipinos, Taiwanese have of course explored, exploited the resources. So China could not basically make a historic claim of this because China has never had any exclusive control of the South China Sea, West China Sea. So China is doing, ignoring the arbitral ruling, discrediting the Permanent Court of Arbitration, coming out with a 10-dash line is an indication of China as a great power simply, trampling over international law, in particular, international law of the sea, and of course, and more significantly, the challenge to the rules-based international order.
Okay.
That China is, of course, challenging at this point in time.
All right. But on the other hand, what are the legal basis of the Philippines that made it get the favorable decision from the arbitral tribunal in 2016?
Well, of course, we have to understand the arbitral tribunal has nothing to do, of course, with sovereignty. This has something to do with maritime entitlement. So the ruling is this is basically what's the ruling all about. China's 9-dash line claim prevents the Philippines from, of course, enjoying its maritime entitlement to an exclusive economic zone, 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone. So the arbitral ruling is silent when it comes to the issue of who owns the islands. So we have resolved that issue, the maritime entitlements, in terms of the arbitral ruling. Now, Associate Antonio Justice Carpio is saying, if China would like to raise the issue of sovereignty, if China has a strong case, then let's bring the case into the International Court of Justice, which, of course, China said, as China's policy is not to subject, its claim into any arbitration. China's claim is, of course, number one, it is indisputable, and we can resolve it through bilateral negotiations, where, of course, China could use its preponderant power in terms of military capability, diplomacy, and economic resources to simply subjugate countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and other Southeast Asian countries that, of course, are challenging China's expansive claim in the South China Sea. So China is playing the game of, again, I would emphasize this, might makes right.
Okay. Well, I would just also like to get your reaction on China's continued military or naval maneuvers, blocking and shadowing Philippine Navy or Philippine Coast Guard vessels conducting resupply missions in the West Philippine Sea. Just recently, another incident of shadowing and trying to block the path of one of our Philippine Navy ships, again for a resupply mission. What is your reaction on that?
Well,
How do
this
you see
marks
that?
an escalation of China. So originally, of course, you have what we call white-to-white ships, Philippine Coast Guard vessels. Okay, so this marks an escalation. So on the ground, what's happening on the ground before you have this incident is we have, of course, a resupply mission, a Philippine commission ship, Philippine Navy commission ship. It's not a part of the Philippine Navy. They just commission it, and it's escorted by the Philippine Coast Guard ships, or the Philippine Coast Guard. Then the Chinese, of course, would send their Coast Guard and their maritime militia to harass and prevent that resupply. So what we're seeing right now is, of course, a Philippine gray ship, a Philippine Navy ship, the BRP Benguet, I believe. Then, of course, being shadowed, then eventually being harassed. You have this Chinese gray ship, People's Liberation Army's Navy ship, crossing the bow of this Philippine gray ship. So this marks an escalation. So you have gray to gray situation, Navy to Navy situation. This marks an effort of the Chinese to raise the level of competition happening there, and from what we call gray zone operation to really gray. Now it's gray to gray, which might lead, of course, to the use of force. So China, in a way, is sending us a message. Sooner than later, I would use force against you.
Okay. Well,
so that's, I believe, what's the message that the Chinese are conveying to us.
Okay. Do you your reaction because Philippine Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro made a statement. He said that the Chinese are the squatters in Pag-asa Islands, and the Chinese, could even apply for a visa through the Bureau of Immigration. What comes into mind when you hear this statement from
It's a fighting.
Defense
It's a
Secretary
fighting
Teodoro?
position. Yeah, it's a fighting position. And I agree with him that, on the basis of the arbitral tribunal, the presence of the Chinese ship, the Chinese have simply no business sending the gray or white ship, their maritime militia, into our exclusive economic zone. They're squatting. They're violating international law. They're, of course, in a way, unraveling the rules-based international order. And they're not only doing it against our fisher folks, our Navy or our Coast Guard. The Pentagon, the U.S. Department of Defense, came out with a report indicating how the Chinese Air Force is, of course, harassing American reconnaissance operation in the whole of the South China Sea. So again, it's not only happening on the sea, this is also happening above the sea. So this is China's efforts to basically effect a de facto control of a large part of what they call their near sea. South China Sea and even the East China Sea.
Rene, is it time? Can we invoke when push comes to shove, and we all know that the Chinese Navy has a more.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, Rene, can you hear me now, Rene? Hello.
The signal is becoming weak. I'm sorry.
All right, sige. We will try okay. Rene, can you hear me now, Rene? Can you hear me now? Rene? Hello? Hello? Rene? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Rene? All right. Okay, we will just, for a while, we will just try to adjust the signal, but we'll try to get back Professor Rene. Rene, can you hear me now, Rene? Rene?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, see, all right. But, is
Hello?
it time? Is it?
Hello?
Hello, Rene. Can you hear me now, Rene? All right.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I was trying
Now
to
I
say.
can hear you.
Okay.
Maybe we have to shift.
All right.
Zoom is becoming very unstable.
Okay. Well then, before I let you go, I hope you can hear this. But before I let you go, is it time for the Philippines to seek assistance to its allies, especially in the United States side, to be more physically present in the West Philippine Sea, especially in accompanying our Philippine naval vessels in our resupplying missions, just to send a message to China that the Philippines is not alone in this crusade. All right. Well, I think we lost him. Okay. Okay. Can he hear me? Can he hear me? All right. Rene. Okay. I think we lost him. Signal. Okay. Well, that was Professor Rene De Castro. All right, he is an international studies expert professor from De La Salle University. So we lost his signal, but I'm very glad to have him in our program today, and it's indeed a pleasure to have him as our maiden live broadcast guest here on our program, Front and Center. Okay, President Marcos Jr. All right, he's back. Is he back? Okay. Okay, can you hear me, Rene?
Now I can hear you.
Yes,
Now
can you hear me now?
now?
Yes. Okay. All right, let me just go back to my last
Copy.
question.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right. Sige, we will, okay. Can you hear me now, Rene? Can you hear me now? Hello? Rene? Hello? Can you hear me now, Rene? Okay, so we just again, para I need to hear him before we have to get his we got to get his last message to answer my last question before we let him go. Okay, sige. All right. Can you hear me now, Rene? Can you hear me now? Rene? Can you hear me now, Rene? Rene?
Yeah, I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Hello? Yes.
Yes.
I can hear you barely.
Okay. Well, my question is it time for the Philippines to invoke or at least use?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, you can hear me now. All right. My question is,
I can hear you.
okay. Is, my question is it time for the Philippines to invoke mutual defense treaties with other countries such as the United States, or at least to make a message to China that the Philippines is not alone in this endeavor, especially in protecting our own sovereign rights because we have our own allies.
Well, the first thing is we can only invoke the mutual defense treaty with the United States if actual force is used. But I think there's been some negotiations regarding this. That's why we have the bilateral defense guidelines that will provide basically under what condition can both parties invoke it. Force has not yet been used. We cannot invoke it. So what we could do, of course, is, but of course, this would entail political will on our part is probably include any of our ally and our security partners to escort our resupply missions in the at Ayungin Shoal. But of course, this will entail a calculated risk on the part of the Philippine government.
Okay.
Because from the Chinese perspective, this will indeed be extremely provocative. And of course, we are of course creating a situation where of course the United States Navy and of course the People's Liberation Army's Navy will be facing each other in a very tense situation. So this will be a political decision on the part of President Marcos if he would allow, of course, a joint patrol or enhanced maritime operation between the United States Navy and the Philippine Navy and, of course, the Philippine Coast Guard in terms of conducting this resupply mission at Ayungin Shoal or even conducting joint patrols near Pag-asa Island.
Okay. Well, I just
Hello?
want. Okay. I got
Hello?
I got your message there. I got your message there, Rene. So, as a parting message, what can you tell us, or what should the Philippines do? What should the Philippine government do, especially our armed forces, in light of this situation, this ever increasing, growing tense situation in the West Philippine Sea?
Number one, we have to come out. I think this is already on the works. What you call a grand strategy. How do we basically prepare, come out with a whole society approach in terms, of course, of building up, specifically, of course, our naval capabilities, the Philippine Navy, and of course, the Philippine Coast Guard. This will also entail, of course, building up the overall armed force of the Philippines. And of course, this needs to be supported by the entire Philippine society. So the government, specifically, of course, the National Security Council and the Department of National Defense are already coming out with a concept of archipelagic defense. The basis of this archipelagic defense is a recognition that the Philippines is an archipelagic state and we have to protect our archipelagic waters and our surrounding waters. So this will entail a huge amount of expenditure resources on our part, basically changing our orientation, the orientation of our nation that is simply focused on the domestic, to start looking at the wider region. And this, of course, will be a long-term project. The end goal is, of course, to ensure our security as an archipelagic state and, of course, as a maritime nation. And, of course, the current government, the current administration had made the first important step, a recognition of the fact that the main challenge to Philippine national security is not anymore internal, it's already external. And, of course, that threat is emanating from our maritime domain. I think this is a long-term game that our nation should be ready to play with.
All right. With that
Hello?
message, thank you very much, Rene, for gracing our program. You are our first maiden live interview program here on Front and Center.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
very much. And that is our international studies expert, Professor Rene De Castro. I said President Marcos, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his administration has, in his foreign policy, states that the Philippines is a friend to all an enemy to none. And he has proven this every time challenges in the international stage beckons, especially when instability of the ASEAN region or even the whole world comes into play by adhering to the international rule of law, finding ways to resolve conflicts without the use of force, but at the same time making known that it will not surrender any Philippine sovereign right. But what happens when a stronger nation, militarily and even economically, bullies its weaker or less capable neighbors? That is, when allies and true friends must come together and in one voice and in one action manifest their support for each other. Allies that can provide support in terms of moral and even military assistance needs to come into fruition. The treaties, such as the Mutual Defense Treaty between the Philippines and the United States, among others, can serve as a deterrent to a military power intent of claiming a region of the vast sea for themselves to support their enormous population and ever-growing industrial economy. The Philippines, together with other nations that has competing claims with China, needs to be ready. Ready to stand up and fight for their right, not only in the eyes of the international community, but also to their people and for their future generations. I hope you enjoyed today's edition of Front and Center. You can watch this program over Radio Pilipinas World Service via Facebook page live broadcast. Just access our Facebook page, Radio Pilipinas World Service. You can also catch every Front and Center programs over our YouTube channel. Just type in your YouTube browser, Radio Pilipinas World Service. The program Front and Center and the programs of Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be listened to the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. Like and follow our Facebook page and like and subscribe to our Radio Pilipinas World Service YouTube channel. I am Rey Sampang. Thank you and mabuhay from the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.